Welcome to our rough draft, where we share real stories from marriage, work, life, and the adventures along the way. We'll laugh, maybe get real, and hopefully help you spark some new conversations in your own life.
I'm Denise, the wild, emotional one who loves words and big ideas.
And I'm Tim. I'm the practical level one who fixes what she dreams up.
That is true. And this is our rough draft, where we share the stories we're still living.
Hello, welcome in. I am Denise, and today we are doing a solo episode of our rough draft. Today I'm talking to you about family dynamics. So, in one of our earlier episodes, Tim mentioned that my family has quite a bit of family dynamics, and I asked him later, I'm like, what do you mean by that? And he said, your family's just big. And they just have a lot of dynamics that are messy and funny and hard and beautiful and complicated. And I was like, that's all true. So let me talk about them a little bit. It isn't complicated to me because I've lived in this family my whole life. But I can understand for somebody who has a very small nuclear family, how our family looks a little bit crazy. So I have a drawing started that I can keep us on track if need be, but you don't have to know exactly how everybody fits into the diagram to know that they're your people. I think that's an important part. My family, starting with me, is complicated. My parents got divorced before I ever remember them being married. So I was a baby when they split up, which has had a lot of complications in my life. But let's go further back than that. My family's from San Diego. San Diego is a small, small little town, perfect small town, but it is small. And everybody seems to know everybody. And so I will tell you that my great grandmother's family moved there in the early 1900s, Minnesota, Campbell, California to San Diego, owned a grocery store and set up shop in San Diego. And so turn of the century, our family was there learning all the things about San Diego. And so we have a strong history there. Tom's side of the family, my dad's side of the family, came to San Diego when my grandfather was in the Navy, and then he stayed there. Ironically, Granny on my mom's side, my mom's grandmother, and Anne, my grandma on Tom's side, worked together at the same bakery in San Diego and met before Tom and Terry, my parents were married, were born. And in fact, Sarah and Bert and baby Terry, my mom, lived in a house in San Diego. And when they moved into a bigger house as they were having more kids, the people who moved into the house that they were vacating were Anne and John and baby Tom, my dad. So that was because Anne and my great grandma worked together at the bakery. And so they knew the house was available. So these people knew each other from the time they were babies, but they didn't know that. They met in college at UC Davis and got married and had me and split up and moved back to San Diego. Why I'm telling you all that is because that network of humans raised me in San Diego. And there were so many of them that I always felt a great support system, even though my parents weren't together, which is an amazing thing as a child, is to know that you have people that love you. So we are going to dig into that today, into family dynamics and all the pieces that go with it. What's been going on for us this week is I am getting over pneumonia, finally feeling better. And we are getting ready to go on a big trip to Italy in about 3 weeks. So we are so excited about that. So lots of fun stuff going on here as we just really get into the school year. Mason has his first beach volleyball match tonight. So that's exciting as well. So let's go. into family dynamics. So I often wonder if this is just our family or if it's many families, that one side of the family has big family dynamics and maybe the other side has smaller family dynamics, and one gets more playtime than the other in relationships, or if it's just maybe the person who is still experiencing going through some of the emotions that they need to because of their family dynamics, how that plays out. So that would be an interesting place to start in a relationship, is whose family dynamics take up the most space in the relationship. So again, I said that my parents were divorced, and that is an important element of who I am. I was very fortunate. My mom remarried when I was 4-ish, to the man who I call dad, who my kids called Papa. And he's the one who walked me down the aisle and raised me and put up with all of my "you're not my real dad" when I was a teenager, and went to Paul McCartney concerts with me and all the things. That was my dad. He passed away 5 years ago. So that is something that we are still grappling with and figuring out how to kind of be in a world without him, and to recognize how sick he was for so long. It was one of the reasons we moved down here to Arizona, so we could be closer to my mom and help her with everything in San Diego. So that is a part of that dynamic as well. The divorce piece comes up big for me in that my first priority has always been our marriage and making sure that we are learning and growing and changing and adjusting and making room for each other, so that this experiment of a marriage is something that lasts. So we are going on 25 years, celebrating that this year. That's why we're going to Italy to start the celebration of our 25th wedding anniversary. So we're so excited about that. And not everybody loves marriage the way I do, but it is something that has been really important to me, because I think of the impacts that it had on me as a kid, not feeling like I had a family or a place where it was just mine. I always had to share with these two families that had both remarried, had both had new kids, and I didn't quite fit. It wasn't quite the way I wanted it to be. My mom will joke, we're going to talk about joking in a minute, that I was not happy to become a sister. And I don't know if that's always true. I love my siblings. I think that I didn't know what it meant to have siblings when they weren't fully blood siblings, because it was always about step siblings and half siblings and figuring out all of that. So it was never easy. It wasn't just, oh, we're having a baby. It was, you're losing your room, or we're moving into a different house on Tom's side, or at our house that we were sharing space and doing things differently because there were new babies in the house. I loved the babies. It was just how it impacted me that I never quite understood. And it took me a while to come around to all of it, which I think is normal and real in blended families. So that still comes up for me. I'm going to talk about fit. I'm going to use this dress as my little example, because this dress hangs in my closet. I bought it a couple years ago when I was in London, and I just thought I was so fancy. And I got it home and I realized it has this one spot where it like gapes a little bit. I'm sure it's the dress and not my perfectly formed body. And it's really sad because like I could fix it, but I don't, because I wear it and I am fine, and I put it back in the closet and I don't think about it. I think that's how fit is in families sometimes. So we realize that we don't fit, or we have emotional reactions to instances where we don't fit, and we struggle with those for that day. And then we move on, we go to sleep. We put the dress back in the closet. We forget that we didn't fit. And when that dress is in the closet, we don't think about it. Like, we don't worry about it. It's only until the next time that we put it back on that we realize, darn it, that didn't fit. And so That can be going to different family gatherings, being with a certain group of people within your family, just feeling like you're in a situation where it doesn't quite feel right. And how do you manage through that? So that could be something where you have to really talk about it, or you have to go to some therapy to work through some of those things. There's great people out there doing family dynamic therapy, talking about family roles, healing the child within, a lot of really good work going on there. But oftentimes it can just be recognizing that you didn't fit and how you want to show up differently so that maybe you do fit better, or you ask for what you need to fit into those circumstances better. I think about that with our own boys, especially the older two being away, coming home in December, asking them, how is it going to be easier for you to be in the house? We recognize that things change when you're not here. Our worlds expand and contract based on who's in them on any given day. And every child in your family gets a different experience from you. And so recognizing that, honoring it, saying it out loud is really key. And so we can say to the boys, hey, you guys are coming back and it's going to be different. What's going to make it feel good? What's going to make it feel hard? And what are you going to say when you recognize like it's not going the way you want it, so that we can make an adjustment if that's something that works for the rest of us? So that fit piece, I think I've grown from and learned how to kind of use it as a superpower with my own family. So let's talk about my own family. So I am an only child, but also the oldest of 6. My parents got divorced when I was really young, and both of their families were very interesting in their own way. So Tom's family, very insular, like Tim's. There are just the 5 of them, mom, dad, 3 boys, and they just had their own dynamic. My grandmother died from breast cancer. It was pretty horrible. She had had it for a lot of years. She was an alcoholic. She smoked. There's a lot of really hard things about being in a family with her, but there are a lot of really great things. She loved me endlessly. That experience that you can have with grandparents versus parents was very apparent there. My grandparents, I was everything, but I guess they were harder on their sons. So I didn't experience that firsthand. I've heard stories about it, of how my grandfather was horrible at sporting events, yelling horrible things. Nobody from that side of the family ever came to any of my sporting events, so I never experienced it. I don't even know. I don't even remember watching sports with them. So I wonder if that was an adaptation that their side of the family made, so he wouldn't be yelling and screaming in the house. But because I know those stories, I worry about them a little bit with our own kids when they get super emotional about sports. I will admit that. But Terry's side of the family, my mom's side of the family, is really the complicated part that Tim will talk about. Be like, I have no idea how these people are related. My mom is the oldest of 6 in her family, and then her parents got divorced and remarried. So truly, she's the oldest of 10. Her youngest brother is just 3 years older than I am, 21 years younger than she is. But she was older when they all came into her life. And so her 5 siblings and her were really the people who raised me. In addition to my grandmother's sister, Leona, and her family, they were integral in how I was raised. So here's where it gets complicated, okay? We're going to go to this crazy family dynamic. Sarah is my mother's mom. Sarah's parents were talented vaudeville St. Louis performers. And they had these 3 little kids. And Sarah's mom got pregnant again and realized that she would not be able to do her life with another child. And so went for an abortion. Abortions were illegal at the time. And it was a botched abortion, and she died. And so here is this man in, 1930s, with 3 little kids. And so he moved to California, and he got help with those 3 kids. And he hired somebody to help him with the kids. Well, the somebody that he hired to help with the kids had come over on the boat after the Titanic. She was set to come over on the Titanic, but she came on the next boat with her sister, and they moved to San Diego to help with these kids. Well, lo and behold, that woman, Doris, married said man with the 3 little kids. Went along and had Leona, my Aunt Noni, and then they split, and Doris remarried, and she was my grandma Mimi, and she remarried Fifi, my grandpa Fifi, and they had 2 more boys. And that is the namesake of my brother, his name for that side of the family. And those are our people. Like, those were our people. That was the bunch. So there was divorce and scandal and abortion all mixed in to those people that are around my dinner table growing up. Gets better. Sarah married Bert. Bert's mom was Alma, Granny, who I was talking about, who knew Anne from the bakery. Well, Bert and Sarah knew each other in high school in San Diego, Hoover High School in San Diego. And Bert's best friend was Bill. And Bill married Sarah's younger sister, Noni, my Aunt Noni. So Aunt Non and Uncle Bill. So the 4 of them were best friends and did everything together until Bert left Sarah in some great scandal. Remarried, whole drama, horrible drama, but whatever. But we got Noni and Bill in that relationship. Noni and Bill later had my cousin Ken, my very, very most favorite relative, and really raised my mom. She lived with them when she was in high school. They were not perfect people, but they loved us in a perfect way. Uncle Bill died right before my dad died. He was, 98 maybe. But he too had a dark and twisty past. His mom, Rini, who we loved, had him out of wedlock at a very young age. I think she might have been 16 when she had him. And he would tell me the stories of how when he was a little boy, they would go back to her house and he had to wait out on the porch because he was a bastard child and wasn't allowed inside. And he was probably 2 or 3 at the time, and she was allowed in. So yeah, family dynamics can do some harm. Can also be great, but they can also do harm. Uncle Bill, oh, that man, he was strong and wise, but he had come from nothing. And so those were important stories in our house. Those were important ways that touched him and made him feel like he didn't fit always. I remember him telling me after we had lost Ken and then after we had lost Noni, how he had nobody left in the world. No, none of his own family. And it wasn't hurtful. Like, he lost his people, and that was for real. So, family dynamics, huh? They can do a number on you. I wanted to share something else about that at this moment. Oh, I know. Just the sadness of it all. Gosh, it was 1989, New Year's Eve on 1989, and one of my most important people in my life passed away. He was a teacher at my school. And my mom was up in San Jose visiting her best friends, and I had to call her and let her know that happened. And then the next year, on New Year's Eve, 1990, Grandpa Fifi passed away. And I had to call my mom and tell her that that happened. So we have this history of like making phone calls with bad things happening. So flash forward, it is April 4th, 1998, and I am in Redmond, Washington, and I am packing up my apartment and moving into a new apartment in Seattle, and I have my friends there helping. And Tim is one of my friends. And the phone rings and it's my mom. And she says, "Is there anybody there with you?" And I said, "Yeah, Tim's there. Let me talk to him." So I put Tim on the phone and he met my mom that day. And she was bossy, as she often is. My mom is good at everything except the emotion of sadness. And so she told Tim that Granny had passed away. We knew it was coming. She was 2 months shy of her 100th birthday, but it was a big loss. And so here's poor Tim having to tell me that she died and deal with all of my emotion so that my mother would not have to. But I think that is a family dynamic that has repeated itself as we continue to lose people in our life. I feel sadness in big ways, and not everybody does, including my mother. And so there's always this like dance that we do when somebody has died or something bad has happened. My mom either calls Tim or my mom calls my brother and my brother calls Tim and then Tim tells me. Like, it's a whole dance. But that is a piece that is real in our family. And I think this idea of sharing all these like historical stories about our family and the kind of horrible things that have happened, you can get an idea that it's not okay to be sad, that it's not okay to grieve and sit with loss, because buck up, buttercup, it's time to go. Like my grandmother, okay, so you lost your mom to an abortion. You got to get moving. Like, we got things to do. Let's go. It's weird. It is unhealthy, and it is something that we will continue to grapple with as a family because it's part of our family legacy of like, be tough, show up, do the thing. I remember the first time that Noni got sick, she had breast cancer and she went into the hospital, and it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. And I was away here at school and they told me, and I of course wanted to go home and see her. And so I went to see her at the hospital. I don't go to hospitals. So I showed up at the hospital and Noni's laying there and she goes, "Is it worse than I think it is? Because Denise is here and I don't understand." Like, and so we had to like temper that. Like, no, you actually are fine. Denise is just being brave and is at the hospital. But you show up for your people because they're your people. Can I pause or do I have to just keep driving through? Okay, I'm going to keep driving through. It's okay because I can't find the pause button. If Tim were here, he would help me. Anyway, this exact scenario is an exceptionally big part of our family story because we lose people. That's like half of what life is losing people. And so this like repeated scenario of grief and sadness and buck up, buttercup has played out over time. We don't talk about people very much after they're gone. We don't call people who are sad because you just buck up, buttercup. And it just could be Denise is being so dramatic. And when you are Denise, you try and change those patterns within your own family. So Thatcher's freshman year in college, one of my most favorite students died by suicide. And he was friends with Thatcher. And I had to make that call to Thatch and let him know what had happened. But I had to make that call. I had to switch the pattern of putting that off on somebody else so that Thatcher knew it was okay to be sad. It was okay to grieve and not suck it up, buttercup. And just in that little change, the dynamic shifted. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to lose your voice when you're trying to talk. And that's how we show up for each other. And so I think about that. And that's going to be one of the questions from today's episode is, what little shift can you do to adjust to your family dynamics or change them just enough in the way that you want to get better? For me, It was making a call when bad things happened. The other family dynamic that I think is big in our family is sarcasm and teasing and joking. That is how we relate to each other. And maybe it's because there's a lot of us, and so it's just easy to poke and prod. But what I know to be true about myself is that I'm not good at it. I don't like it. I don't like being the butt of jokes. I don't like not being in on the joke. I don't like people joking around with me. I don't know. I just don't like it. I feel like there is an underlying meanness to it. I just don't metabolize it well. And yet I use it, and it makes me mad that it's one of my go-tos. It just bugs me because I don't think I'm mean, but I can be. And so we have established the family rule of sarcasm is not a parenting tool, as a reminder to not use it. It's easy to slip into. It's easy to use. The line that I heard my whole life growing up is, "We're just giving you a bad time." Yeah, it is a bad time. I don't want it. I want a good time. And so that is something that I am constantly working on to see if I can make adjustments to, so that I am not teasing or joking in a way that comes across as unkind or comes across as this baseline of mean, because I don't want that for our family, especially if you're new to our family, because then it feels like you never quite know where you stand. And so that's why that is really important to me. I guess that's enough for today about family dynamics. There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. What is important, I think, in all of it is that we've learned to navigate them. Tim has learned to sit with my sadness. He has learned to see where my father abandoning me and divorce plays out in my day-to-day, every day, and how I am always still healing from that, and that we are not about fixing those things in each other, but noticing them, talking about them, showing up in small and big ways to support them when that is needed, talking openly about it, recognizing the differences. So that's been a big piece of how Tim and I have navigated this, is asking better questions rather than pointing out the obvious. So it's easy to say, "Gosh, that reminds me so much of your dad," or "Gosh, you're acting like your mom today." That's just pointing it out. Versus asking a question. "Gosh, it seems like something is there that is similar to maybe your family of origin. Can you tell me what's going on for you right now?" Those questions, when you ask a question that you really want to know the answer to and you're really curious about, that is authentically showing up for the other person versus pointing out something that they could think that you're judging them about. I love Tim's parents, but sometimes when I say, "Gosh, you look just like your mom right now," he wonders if I'm making a judgment. And so I have to say, "Remember, I love your mom. There's something right now that you are doing that's exactly like her. Do you see it, or is that just me and the lens I am seeing it through?" And what a cool thing to be like your parents. So we have to have that deeper, richer, more filled in conversation than just pointing things out, asking really good questions to see what's going on with each other, recognizing those inherited patterns and choosing which ones we want to move forward with and which ones we want to adjust. So for me, I think about family dynamics all the time because I live in a dynamic family. And I think that it is fun to have people that you are related to all over a city and try and figure out how you're related to them. I love that we always hosted Christmas Eve growing up. It went from being at Noni's house to being at our house. And it doesn't it's not going to exist anymore. And so how do I recreate that for my family so that they get to experience it? We did it last year with friends and brought in Cooper's girlfriend and yeah, like it's fun to have more people and shift that dynamic in the room to not just be the five of us, but to be bigger and more diverse and more exciting and richer, deeper conversations. I love when I get to see my family. My uncle was able to stay with us a couple days this summer, and that was fun. It was fun to hear stories from his perspective that were different than I had ever heard. It's fun to know that we all like lived the same history and each had our own perspective on it. I don't see some of the family that I would like to as much. I'll just leave it at that. What is a mini moment from this week is where we go next. So, a mini moment from this week that makes me think about family dynamics is just my mom's sister was visiting her this last week, and then her best friend is there this week. And I love that. I love that you still get together with the people that matter to you, even when you're really old. Okay, she's not that old. I know she's never going to listen. So I can say that. But family is also created family. And while I have this rich, crazy, extended, twisted family, I also have friends that are family, and not just the people in our drug life that we have taken from the different places in times in our life and made them our family, but the friends that my mom and dad made along the way. So Roseanne, my mom's best friend, is at her house for a week right now. They have been friends since 7th grade. Like, you can't deny that that's a friend that's become a family. And her kids are like my other siblings. And that is such a gift in this world. So that's my mini moment for this week. And I would challenge you to look at your patterns and what do you notice in your own family dynamics? What have you brought forward? What are you tamping down? What are you trying to change along the way? And what's one small shift that you could make in your relationships this week? Not a big change, just a little shift where you go, oh, this is how I want it to feel versus this is how it feels right now. We would love for you to share your stories with us. We would also love for you to follow this podcast, like and share it so that we get these stories out into the world more and more people have the opportunity to share with the people in their lives that they love. Next time, Tim will be back with me and we'll keep unpacking these ideas together. So for now, thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.